What is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Your guys, Cody and Matt here. Guys, there's been a report floating around that the Falcons are likely to trade wide receiver Calvin Ridley somewhere. And we don't know exactly if that report is 100% accurate, but there has been some rumblings the last couple months about Calvin Ridley potentially moving somewhere else from Atlanta, trying to go somewhere else, trying to kind of restart in a way. If you remember last year, he missed a number of games, kind of took some time off for his mental health. And so I thought it'd be, worth a conversation at the minimum to kind of talk about, okay, does Calvin Ridley make sense to Indianapolis? Could the Colts potentially be interested in the receiver? And what would it take potentially to bring him in? Would it be likely? So, Matt, I know you did a video on Calvin Ridley to the Colts here just recently within the last day or so. So when this report came out, I was like, well, perfect timing, man. For you to get that out. But what are your overall thoughts on wide receiver Calvin Ridley as a football player?
I like Calvin Ridley a lot. He's a type of receiver that can get you 12 to 15 yards per catch, which, in this offense, I believe would be very valuable. And I think he could really pair up with Michael Pittman very well. He only played 5 games this past season, was still productive in those 5 games. So there obviously is, the off the field stuff, like his mental stuff that you have to put into consideration, but I like him a lot. I think he can fit this offense and he would fit the role that I think we're looking for.
Mm-hmm. I think he's 27, 28 years old. So he's still fairly young as well. I think I have a couple potential issues with the Colts potentially getting Calvin Ridley, and I want to hear your thoughts on it. First off, I think the debate is the money. Will Calvin Ridley want a good amount of money? And also you're trading away draft capital. How much are the Falcons going to realistically ask for a guy like Calvin Ridley? Is it going to be, a second round? Is it going to be a couple picks? What's it going to be? Because Calvin Ridley, when he played in 15 games in 2020, he had over 1,000 yards. He was one of the better receivers in football. So he's still a very good wide receiver, still very young. So what's it going to take to acquire him? I think that's one of my biggest question marks is just that, what's it going to take? And secondly would be just where is he mentally? Where is his mental state right now? Because he missed a good chunk of the season. You talked about he only played in 5 games. He missed a good chunk of the season. The Colts as Colts fans, he's already dealt with a guy who struggled with, did he want to play football? Did he not want to play football? Do we want to potentially put ourselves with that realistic possibility? So those are my 2 biggest concerns. What are your thoughts on those?
So when it comes to what it would cost to bring him here, it's probably going to be a little more than what the Titans got for Julio Jones. I believe it was 2nd and a 5th for Julio. Mm-hmm. We're probably looking at a 2nd and a 4th, 2nd and a 3rd for Calvin Ridley. So there is that I think we got to keep in mind. And he's definitely going to cost a lot of money, especially if he comes back and plays really well this upcoming season, wherever he's at, whether it's Indy or on another team. But I still think it's worth it. You might have to give up a couple picks, but if you saw Chris Ballard's presser earlier, you would know that he said that as long as, he said that we need to bring in more weapons. And maybe Calvin Ridley is somebody that we need to bring in because, like I said, I think he fits really well. He's going to cost a lot of money, but, Chris Ballard's willing to pay players that are worth the money, big money. And as far as his mental health, last I heard, he said he's good to go. He wants to play football. He's looking forward to playing football again. So I think he's fine. I think he's good to go. But that is definitely something you got to keep in mind with his mental health for next year and the year after. And look, you got to take care of yourself. If that's something you need to address it. But if he's ready to go, I would go for it. I think it's going to cost a little bit, but I don't think it'd be anything too crazy.
Now, here's my question. What would be, I guess, the difference in the Colts, obviously trading for Calvin Ridley, getting rid of some draft capital, as opposed to going and signing a wide receiver in free agency? Because there are some really good wide receivers in free agency. I guess for my question is, why wouldn't they go that route and go get a guy, like Chris Godwin or, whoever, fill in the blank. There's a lot of good receivers. We talked about a lot of them, but, or Allen Robinson, or, just to name a few. What would be the difference, I guess, in them going and doing that versus getting a guy like Calvin Ridley? And also, if they truly are in the market for a big name quarterback, it's taking more ammo away from potentially making that trade. Those are my questions as well. What are your thoughts on those?
I would say when it comes to that, if you're going to trade for Calvin Ridley, you know you're going to get Calvin Ridley. You don't know if Chris Godwin, Allen Robinson would sign with Indianapolis. So you know, at least for a year, you're going to get Calvin Ridley. And hopefully he enjoys his time in Indianapolis and he wants to re-sign. So that's what I would say the difference is. Yeah, you're going to have to pay some draft capital. I don't know what they're going to do with quarterback. I don't think they're going to trade, in all honesty. I don't think they're going to get Russell Wilson. I don't think they're getting Aaron Rodgers. If they're going to move on from Carson, it's going to be a free agent. So I don't think, trading for Calvin Ridley would affect the quarterback they get, because I think if they're going to move on, they're going to sign somebody in free agency anyway. So at least you're going to get a really good player if you trade for Calvin Ridley. But if you take a chance in free agency, yeah, you might get somebody, but you also might not.
Mm-hmm. No, that's totally fair. I totally get that. I'm just kind of wondering, like, if you sign a guy in free agency, maybe it's not to quite Calvin Ridley's level. Maybe it is. You get him for multiple years. Whereas Calvin Ridley, if all doesn't work well, then you're stuck looking for another wide receiver next year.
True.
But again, those are all big ifs at this point. But it certainly is an interesting conversation nonetheless. And I'd love to hear what our listeners think about the potential of getting Calvin Ridley. What would you guys realistically give up for him? Let us know in the comments below. Are you more on Matt's side? Would you really love to see Calvin Ridley in the Colts uniform? Or are you kind of like, I don't know? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And as always, go Colts.